So you're probably wondering why anyone would want to go poking around on Mercury of all places. The closest rock to the sun isn't exactly where you go for a scenic vacation or a nice tan. But when it comes to real estate, location is everything. And for the cult of the Singularity, Mercury was prime property. The bastards loved the heat. Hell, maybe they were born from it. Commander Vina Arcadi, of all people, had been the lucky one picked to peel back the layers of this metallic onion. She wasn't thrilled about it. Then again, she wasn't thrilled about much. She sat in the dimly lit control room of the Earthship. Why the hell are we here? A name that really summed up the mission. The ship hummed with the kind of optimism you'd find in a funeral parlor. "Commander, we're approaching the coordinates," said Lieutenant Jax, who had the charm of a rusty nail. "Any last wishes before we dive into hell?" Vina smirked, a habit she couldn't shake. "Yeah, make sure the coffee machine survives. If we're going to be cooked alive, I want my caffeine levels topped off." Jax snorted, pushing a few buttons as if he actually knew what they did. "You think this cult's really behind the FTL ban?" "I think," Vina replied, her eyes scanning the radar, "that when people start worshipping ancient machines, common sense goes out the airlock." The ship began its descent, its hull squealing like a cat in a blender. Jax was muttering something about structural integrity, but Vina had tuned out. Mostly because she knew if the ship was going to fall apart, there wasn't much they could do but scream and hope someone heard them. They landed with all the grace of a drunk elephant, the ship's feet sinking into Mercury's rocky surface. "Well," Jax said, unstrapping himself with the enthusiasm of a man facing a firing squad, "time to go meet the in-laws." "Let's hope they are the welcoming type," Vina replied, grabbing her helmet. "Or at least the type that doesn't shoot on sight." Their suits hissed as they sealed, the temperature inside rising to match Mercury's infernal atmosphere. Outside, the landscape looked like someone had taken a baseball bat to a tin can, craters and metal mingled in chaotic harmony. They trudged toward the cult's base, a structure that looked suspiciously like an old space junkyard. Vina couldn't help but chuckle. What? No golden statues or sacrificial altars. "I'm disappointed. Maybe they keep the fancy stuff inside," Jax replied, tapping on a door that looked like it had been stolen off an ancient Earth fridge. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit corridor that smelled like moldy socks and desperation. A figure emerged, clad in robes that shimmered like oil on water. He, or she, Vina couldn't tell, looked at them with the enthusiasm of a mortician meeting a customer. "Welcome," the figure intoned, voice slicker than a politician's promise. "We are the cult of the Singularity." "Yeah, we got that," Vina replied, her voice echoing down the corridor. "I'm Commander Vina Arcadi and this is Lieutenant Jax. We're here to talk about your," she paused, searching for the right word, "unique beliefs." The cultist's eyes gleamed like a gambler spotting an easy mark. "Ah, the curious minds of Earth. Follow me." They were led through winding passages lined with relics of a bygone era, rusted gears, flickering screens, and the occasional mysterious gizmo that probably once did something important. Vina had the distinct impression they were walking through a museum curated by lunatics. "This," their guide announced, gesturing dramatically as they entered a large chamber, "is the heart of our worship." Vina squinted at the room's centerpiece, a massive machine, its innards exposed like a gutted fish. Wires dangled, sparks flew, and a low hum sang the song of 1,000 potential safety violations. "What the hell is that?" Jax asked, voice dripping with the usual military decorum. "That," the cultist replied with reverence, "is the Oracle. It guides us." Vina stepped closer, peering at the machine's guts with a mix of curiosity and morbid fascination. "And it told you to ban Earth's FTL tech because—" "Why exactly?" The cultist smiled, a toothy grimace that was less welcoming and more "I might eat your soul." "Such technology disrupts the balance. We must preserve the void's sanctity." Vina suppressed a laugh, not entirely successful. "Preserve the void's sanctity. You do realize we're sitting on a metal ball orbiting a nuclear fireball, right?" The cultist's smile didn't falter but gained a hint of condescension. "It is not for the unenlightened to understand." "Clearly," Vina replied, rolling her eyes. "So what's the plan?" "You keep Earth grounded while you play with this oversized toaster. The Oracle will reveal its secrets in time," the cultist said, as if reciting a well-worn sermon. Vina exchanged a look with Jax. "Yeah, well, some of us don't have all the time in the universe." They spent the next hour feigning interest as the cultist droned on about the machine's glories. Vina's patience was thinner than Mercury's atmosphere by the time they were shown to their quarters, small metallic cubes that could have doubled as coffins. "Well, this is cozy," Jax muttered, flopping onto the bed with the enthusiasm of a dead fish. Vina sat on the edge, rubbing her temples. "I swear, if I hear one more word about the Oracle, I'm going to short-circuit it myself." Jax laughed, a rare sound. "Think they'll even notice?" "Not until the lights go out," Vina replied, lying back, "and by then we'll be long gone." But as she stared at the ceiling, a thought nagged at her. These cultists were a joke, sure, but they were hiding something. Something big enough to make Earth's leaders nervous. "Hey, Jax," she said softly, a plan forming. "Tomorrow we need to poke around a bit more. See what's behind the curtain." "What, you think there's a Wizard of Oz in this shithole?" Jax asked, one eye open. "I think," Vina replied, smirking at the ceiling, "that these lunatics are playing a game we don't know the rules to." And if there was one thing Vina Arcadi hated, it was being left out of the game. Especially when the stakes were so high you could burn your fingers just thinking about them. The next morning they slipped out of their quarters, armed with nothing but their wits and a few choice insults. The corridors were eerily silent, the kind of quiet that suggested everyone was either asleep or dead. Vina preferred the former, but you never could be too sure. They retraced their steps to the chamber with the Oracle, which was now pulsing gently in the dim light. Vina approached the machine, her fingers itching to see if the damn thing had an off switch. "Hey, look at this," Jax called from a corner. He was staring at a panel, its screen flickering with static. Vina joined him, squinting at the screen. "It's an old Earth language," she said, recognizing the archaic script. "Looks like a diagnostic readout." "Think you can translate it?" Jax asked, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I can try," Vina said, fingers dancing over the controls. The words began to resolve into something recognizable, and what she saw made her blood run cold. "Jax," she said, her voice suddenly serious. "This isn't just some broken-down relic, it's a control node for something big." "Big like what?" Jax asked, eyes wide. Vina shook her head, adrenaline sharpening her senses. "Big like planetary defense grid big. These lunatics are sitting on a weapon that could fry half the solar system. And I'm guessing they've got no clue what they're sitting on," Jax murmured. "Or worse," Vina replied, "maybe they do." Just then the lights flickered, and the familiar sound of footsteps echoed down the hall. Vina turned, heart pounding. "We've got company." "What's the plan?" Jax asked, reaching for his sidearm. Vina grinned, adrenaline singing in her veins. "We improvise." The door swung open, and Vina braced for whatever came next. As the cultists entered, their expressions a mix of confusion and anger, Vina realized something. This was going to be one hell of a negotiation. Vina braced herself as the cultists filed into the room, their robes swishing like a low-budget horror show. The one leading the charge had an air of importance, or maybe it was just the extra layer of grime on his robes. Vina wasn't sure. "Ah, Commander Arcadi," the man intoned, his voice as oily as the machine in the center of the room. "I am Hierophant Talther." "Great," Vina said, not even trying to hide her sarcasm. "Always nice to meet the local celebrity. Do I get an autograph?" Talther's smile was as warm as a lunar night. "I see you've become acquainted with our Oracle." "Yeah, we were just admiring its rustic charm," Jax said, his deadpan delivery enough to make Vina suppress a grin. The Hierophant ignored the jab, his gaze fixed on Vina like she was a particularly interesting insect. "You see, Commander, the Oracle is not merely a relic, it is a conduit to higher knowledge." Vina raised an eyebrow. "Higher knowledge? What are we talking here, faster than light coffee delivery?" Talther's eyes flickered with something akin to amusement, or maybe annoyance. With cult leaders, it was hard to tell. The Oracle has the potential to break the chains that bind us to this limited understanding of time and space. We believe it holds the key to transcending our current limitations. So, it's a magic box that solves all your problems, huh? Jax interjected, folding his arms. Only for those deemed worthy, Talther replied smoothly, as if he'd rehearsed this line 1,000 times. You, Commander, he continued, turning back to Vina, have the potential to unlock its secrets. Oh, goody, Vina said dryly. I love a good puzzle. Where do I start? Sudoku, crosswords, or do we cut straight to the human sacrifices? Talther gave a thin smile, clearly having heard a similar brand of snark before. There are trials, of course, to prove your worthiness. Should you pass, the Oracle might reveal its secrets to you. Vina glanced at Jax, who shrugged with a "we've got nothing better to do" expression. All right, Talther, I'll play your game, but if this is some elaborate prank, I'm taking it out of your hide. Talther gestured for them to follow, leading them deeper into the warren of corridors. The air carried a distinct odor of unwashed bodies, metal, and madness. Vina felt right at home. They arrived in a chamber that looked like a cross between a gym and a gladiator pit. The walls were lined with ancient weaponry and bizarre contraptions that seemed to serve no obvious purpose other than to intimidate or injure. Our trials are comprehensive, Talther said, gesturing to the room. Comprehensive. That's one way to put it, Jax muttered, eyeing a pair of spiked gauntlets with trepidation. Vina sighed, cracking her knuckles. All right, let's get this over with. What do I have to do, wrestle a bear? Nothing so crude, Talther replied, a hint of smugness in his tone. First, you will demonstrate your knowledge of the Oracle's language. Vina arched an eyebrow. You mean the language on the diagnostic screen? The one in Old Earth script. Indeed, Talther said, sounding like a teacher pleasantly surprised a student had done their homework. Vina rolled her eyes, stepping up to the panel. Fine. Let's see what we've got here. The screen flickered, and a list of codes and warnings scrolled past. Vina ran a finger down the list, her brain ticking over like an old clock. Okay, this bit here says system overload imminent, and this one, recalibration required. These machines are like an elderly grandparent, keep going and eventually they'll need a nap. Talther inclined his head, acknowledging her competence with a grudging nod. Not bad, Commander, you show promise. Yay me, Vina said deadpan. What's next? Karaoke. There's a physical component, Talther replied, gesturing to the room's daunting array of obstacles. It's one thing to understand the Oracle, it's another to demonstrate your dedication. Vina snorted. You want me to run an obstacle course? You realize I'm a spaceship commander, not an Olympic athlete, right? Consider it a test of endurance, Talther suggested, with all the warmth of a wet fish. Vina exchanged a glance with Jax, who was unsuccessfully stifling a laugh. All right, she sighed, stepping up to the starting line. Let's see if I can manage not to die of embarrassment. The course was a nightmare. Swings, slides, and spikes that seemed designed by someone who'd watched too many episodes of ancient warrior death games. Vina threw herself into the fray, gritting her teeth as she slipped and stumbled through the chaos. Watch out for the tripwire, Jax called helpfully, just as her foot caught it. Vina tumbled forward, narrowly avoiding a face full of spikes. She shot him a glare that promised retribution. Finally, panting and covered in bruises, she emerged on the other side. Talther was waiting, a bemused expression on his face. Well, Vina panted, did I pass or am I about to get kicked out for unsportsmanlike conduct? You have proven yourself in both mind and body, Talther acknowledged, his voice as smooth as a politician's handshake. There is one final trial. Of course there is, Vina grumbled. What now? Do I have to arm wrestle the Oracle? Talther allowed himself a small chuckle. Nothing so crude, you must demonstrate your commitment to the Singularity. Vina groaned internally. If this involves a tattoo, I'm out. Not quite, Talther replied, leading them to another chamber. This one was lined with metallic cylinders, each humming with a soft, eerie glow. You must interface with the Oracle. Share your consciousness. Share my consciousness, Vina blinked. You mean plug myself into a machine that might just want to fry my brain like an egg? Talthor nodded solemnly. Exactly. Sounds like a party, Jax quipped. Mind if I skip this one? Vina sighed, eyeing the nearest cylinder. Guess it's my turn to be the guinea pig. Your courage is noted, Talthor said, gesturing for her to step forward. Vina shot him a dry look. Courage? Nah, just a complete lack of self-preservation. She settled into the contraption, feeling the cool metal hum against her skin. Wires and sensors snaked around her and she forced herself to relax. All right, Oracle, she murmured. Let's see what secrets you've got. The world warped, her senses stretching like taffy. For a moment, she was everywhere and nowhere, her consciousness expanding into an infinite web of connections. Ghostly images flickered at the edge of her mind, stars, machines, the endless void. She sensed something, a presence, vast and ancient, lurking behind the surface. It watched her with an impersonal curiosity, like a scientist peering through a microscope at a particularly interesting specimen. Well, aren't you a nosy bugger, Vina muttered. The presence shifted slightly in response, a ripple of acknowledgement. Then came the flash images and ideas pouring into her mind in a torrent. Flashes of worlds beyond comprehension, equations that danced like fireflies, a sense of possibilities unbound by the tyranny of time. And then, just as suddenly, it was over. Vina gasped, the world snapping back into focus as she stumbled out of the cylinder. Talthor was waiting, his expression unreadable. And, he asked, eyes gleaming with curiosity. Vina shook her head, trying to make sense of the jumble of thoughts left in the wake of her experience. It's complicated, she finally managed. But I think I saw what you're looking for. Jax was at her side, steadying her. You all right? Yeah, she said, giving him a shaky smile. Just took a little trip through Wonderland. Talthor nodded, satisfaction in his eyes. The Oracle has chosen then, you are worthy. Vina snorted. Great. So what's the prize? Do I get to pick a stuffed animal from the top shelf? You get to help us unlock the secrets of the Singularity, Talthor replied, all seriousness now. Help us lift the FTL ban. Vina took a deep breath, the weight of the task settling on her shoulders. All right, but let's get one thing straight. I'm not doing this because I believe in your fairy tales. I'm doing it because if there's even a small chance we can crack FTL, someone needs to make sure you lot don't blow us all to kingdom come. Talthor inclined his head, a ghost of a smile on his lips. As you wish, Commander. We will see what the Oracle has to offer. As they made their way back, Vina couldn't help but feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on her. Her mind buzzed with possibilities and fears, but above all was a simple, stubborn determination. Whatever game the cult was playing, she was going to make damn sure she was the one holding all the cards. Jax, she said, glancing at her lieutenant, we've got our work cut out for us. Yeah, Jax agreed, ever the optimist. But at least we've got a front row seat to the end of the universe. Vina chuckled, the sound rough but genuine. And if we play our cards right, we might just get to write the script. The Earthship Why the Hell Are We Here was living up to its name, in Vina's cynical opinion. Inside the ship's command center, a place that constantly smelled like burnt coffee and frustration, she received the latest updates from Earth. Spoiler alert, it wasn't good news. Commander Arcady, a voice crackled over the comms. It was Admiral Hawthorne, the sort of guy who had two settings, irritable and asleep. We're running out of time. The situation on Earth is deteriorating faster than a politician's promise. We need results from this mission yesterday. Good to hear from you too, sir, Vina replied, her voice dripping with enough sarcasm to drown a small country. Just so we're clear, I haven't suddenly become omnipotent while you were away. These trials are a bit more try not to die than push the big red button that solves all problems. Hawthorne grumbled something unintelligible, probably a prayer for patience. Maybe a curse. Get it done, Commander. Hawthorne out. The comms went dead, leaving Vina to stew in her own irritation. She had a special gift for dealing with authority, specifically the kind of gift that made them want to walk into space without a suit. Sounds like they're really rolling out the red carpet back home, Jax observed, leaning against a console with the sort of casual ease of someone who'd accepted that life was a series of increasingly bad jokes. Yeah, more like rolling out a funeral procession, Vina replied. They're panicking over the FTL ban. Without faster-than-light travel, we're looking at a future where humanity's biggest adventure is seeing who can grow the most potatoes on Mars. Jax nodded, giving her a look of mock sympathy. And you thought steering us through the trials of a mad cult was going to be your most stressful day. Any other bright ideas, Lieutenant? Vina asked, already regretting asking. Well, Jax said, grinning in that infuriating way he had, you could always take up knitting. I hear it's very relaxing, Vina snorted. I'd rather crochet a noose. They both fell silent for a moment, contemplating the enormity of their task. The Oracle wasn't just a machine, nor was it some dusty artifact to be filed away in the annals of history. It was a potential game changer, a ticket out of stagnation and back to the stars. Assuming it didn't fry their brains first. Think the cult knows what they've really got? Jax asked, breaking the silence. Vina considered. I doubt it. They're like kids playing with a loaded gun. They might understand the basics, but the real implications. Not a chance, cheery thought, Jax said. So, what's the next step in our glorious march towards potential obliteration? Vina grimaced. I need to go back and talk to Talther. See if I can squeeze more information out of him without revealing that I've got about as much faith in their oracle as I do in a politician's handshake. Good luck with that, Jax said, pushing himself off the console. I'll hold the fort here. Try not to get yourself inducted into any more cults. Vina shot him a look that suggested he'd be wearing a console as a hat if he kept it up, then made her way through the ship's corridors. The air was perpetually stale, like the recycled breath of 1,000 anxious crew members. Comforting in its own way, she supposed. Back in the cult's lair, she found Talther meditating in front of the oracle, as if communing with a deity that probably needed an oil change. Ah, Commander Arcady, Talther said, rising with a fluidity that belied his age. Have you come to embrace the singularity? I'm here to understand it, Vina replied, mentally adding, and keep it from blowing us all to hell. Talther nodded serenely, as if unaware or unconcerned by the tension in Vina's voice. Understanding is the first step. The oracle has shared its visions with you. Now, you must help guide us to the next phase. Right, Vina said, folding her arms. Do you have any idea what that next phase actually is? Or are we just guessing based on the hallucinations it serves up? Talther's smile was maddeningly patient. The oracle's wisdom is not for the faint-hearted. Interpreting its messages requires dedication. Vina resisted the urge to roll her eyes so hard they'd fall out of her head. Let's cut the crap, Talther. We both know this thing is more than just a glorified fortune teller. It's got power, real power. And if we're not careful, it's going to take us on a ride none of us are prepared for. Talther's gaze hardened slightly, the true believer peeking out from behind the mask. And you believe you're prepared, Commander? No, Vina said bluntly. But I'm smart enough to know when we're in over our heads. You want to unlock the secrets of FTL? We need to be damn sure we know what we're dealing with. For a moment, Talther's serene facade cracked, a glimpse of uncertainty flitting across his features. Then he schooled his expression, the zealot mask firmly back in place. Very well. I will give you access to the Oracle's archives. Perhaps they will grant you the understanding you seek. Great, Vina said, trying to sound more enthusiastic than she felt. I always did love a good bedtime story. Back at the ship, Vina and Jax pored over the archives, a collection of data more ancient than any civilization that currently existed. The information was fragmented, like a puzzle assembled by a drunk archaeologist. Look at this, Jax said, his finger tracing a line of code. There's something here about temporal shifts, like the Oracle can manipulate time. Vina leaned in, squinting at the screen. And here I was thinking time travel was just a good way to ruin a perfectly stable universe. Great, think this could be the key to FTL? Jax asked, a rare note of hope in his voice. It could be, Vina admitted. Or it could be the key to turning us inside out like socks. If those cultists unlock this and don't know what they are doing. Yeah, I get it, Jax said. Boom, right, Vina agreed. Boom, and not the fun kind with fireworks and celebratory drinks. They spent the next few hours dissecting the data, the ship's artificial night cycle doing little to diminish the steady thrum of tension in the air. It was a delicate dance. One wrong step and humanity could find itself tumbling into the abyss. Vina's comm signaled, interrupting the silence. Commander Arcady said, a voice she recognized as the ship's comm officer, Darius. There's a message from Earth. It's marked urgent because of course it is, Vina muttered. Patch it through. It was Hawthorne again, looking even more irritable than usual. Arcady, the situation's getting worse. There's talk of unrest, factions forming, demanding action. We need a solution fast, Vina sighed, rubbing her temples. Admiral, we're doing everything we can. But this isn't a problem we can solve by pressing a button. Just keep me informed, Hawthorne snapped, ending the transmission before she could reply. Charming fellow, Jax observed. Really makes you feel all warm inside, Vina groaned. Feels more like heartburn. Their focus returned to the data, each discovery a potential thread to pull at. But with every revelation came more questions, a tangled web of possibilities and pitfalls. Here's the thing I don't get, Jax said, frowning at the screen. Why Mercury? Why'd they build this thing here? Vina tapped her chin, considering. Maybe the heat's part of it. Some kind of power source, or maybe it's the isolation. Harder to mess with something when it's sitting on a planet where stepping outside means instant barbecue. Or maybe they just had a thing for extreme sunbathing, Jax quipped. Could be, Vina replied. Or they were smart enough to put their dangerous toys somewhere hard to reach. The Iors dragged on, the work a grueling test of endurance and patience. It was like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube while blindfolded, and every time they thought they had a solution, the pieces would shift again. Finally, Vina pushed back from the console, exhaustion etched into her features. We need a break, she said. My brain's about to melt out of my ears. Jack stretched, his joints cracking like popcorn. Agreed. How about a drink? I've got some synth whiskey that's only slightly toxic. Sold, Vina said, grateful for the distraction. As they made their way to the ship's makeshift bar, a corner of the mess hall that had been unofficially rechristened the Pit of Despair, Vina's mind buzzed with half-formed ideas and nagging doubts. The Oracle was more than they'd bargained for, and if they weren't careful, it could spell disaster for everyone. Jax poured the whiskey, handing her a glass. To figuring out the secrets of the universe before it figures us out, he said, raising his drink. Vina clinked her glass against his, and to not blowing ourselves up in the process, they drank in silence, the alcohol burning a comforting path down her throat. It wasn't much, but it was a respite. So what's the plan? Jax asked finally, setting his glass down with a thud. Vina considered, the weight of responsibility heavy on her shoulders. We keep digging. We find out everything we can about this Oracle, and we make sure whatever happens next is on our terms. Sounds like a plan, Jax said. I'm in. They sat there for a while, the quiet hum of the ship their only companion. Despite the odds, despite the pressure, Vina felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. It was a dangerous thing, but maybe, just maybe, it was exactly what they needed. As they sat contemplating the enormity of their task, Vina couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something incredible or incredibly destructive. Either way, she was determined to steer them through the chaos, even if it meant breaking a few rules along the way. Because if there was one thing Vina Arcady knew how to do, it was survive in a universe that seemed hell-bent on destroying her. And if she had to drag humanity, kicking and screaming, into a future where they weren't stuck staring at the same old stars, well, she'd do it with a smile on her face and a sarcastic quip ready to go. After all, what was life without a little danger? Vina Arcady found herself in the belly of the cult's lair once more, trying not to breathe too deeply. The place reeked of incense, a scent that tried, and failed, to mask something far less pleasant. Ancient machinery, perhaps, or the collective desperation of a group of zealots who'd traded common sense for a ticket to some imagined utopia. "Commander Arcady," Talther greeted her, his voice as oily as ever. "Have the archives revealed their wisdom?" "Wisdom. I'd settle for coherence," Vina replied dryly. "There's more gibberish in those files than a toddler with a keyboard, but I did find something interesting. A little faction within your merry band of misfits." Talther's eyes narrowed, a crack appearing in his typically serene facade. "I see you've been busy." "Always am," Vina said, shrugging. "Especially when it involves a potential coup in a cult. Your loyal disciples aren't as unified as you'd like to think. Some of them believe the Oracle's secrets should be shared with the rest of humanity." "The misguided, willful ignorance of dissidents," Talther said, dismissing them with a wave of his hand. "They lack the vision to understand the gravity of our mission. Or maybe they just don't like the idea of playing God," Vina suggested. "You keep this up, you might have a rebellion on your hands, and that's the last thing we need with Earth on the brink of going dark." Vina watched Talther as he processed this, his expression shifting like a kaleidoscope of emotions: irritation, doubt, and ultimately, resolve. In another life she might have found it amusing. Here, it was just another layer of the cosmic joke they were all living. "We remain focused on our goal," Talther said finally, his voice firm. "The Oracle will guide us. If it doesn't lead us straight into a supernova first," Vina shot back. With Talther's taciturn agreement, because a cult leader never openly admits to dissent, Vina returned to her ship, feeling the weight of the universe pressing down harder than the ship's artificial gravity. Jax was waiting for her, looking far too relaxed for someone knee-deep in potential obliteration. "How'd it go with the robe-wearers?" he asked. Same old," Vina replied, flopping into the chair next to him. "They're singing from the We Know Best hymn book, but we've got a few dissenters in the ranks." "Dissenters? As in people with a brain cell to rub together?" Jax grinned. "Color me surprised." "Yeah, well, don't start painting just yet. Talther's not about to hand over the keys to the kingdom." Jax leaned back, feet propped on the console, a picture of casual defiance. "So what's our next grand move, oh fearless leader?" Vina glanced at the screens, lines of alien code crawling like ants across their displays. "We need to figure out how these dissenters tick. If there's a way to ally with them, leverage their knowledge without tipping our hand to Talther, we might stand a chance of getting ahead in this mess." "You want to use the cult's internal drama against itself," Jax said, eyebrows raised. "In a word, yes," Vina replied, a grim smile tugging at her lips. "It's either that, or we sit back and watch the fireworks when this whole thing comes tumbling down." "Well, if we're going down, might as well make it interesting," Jax said, raising an imaginary glass. Vina shook her head, amusement battling with exhaustion. "And they say you're not an optimist." The next few days were a whirlwind of clandestine meetings in the shadowed nooks of the cult's labyrinthine base. Vina found herself navigating a tightrope, balancing between cautious alliances and the ever-watchful eyes of Talther's loyalists. She met with the leader of the dissident faction, a wiry woman named Seraph, who wore her defiance like a badge of honor. If Talther was the calm before the storm, Seraph was the thundercloud on the horizon. "Commander Arcady," Seraph greeted her, voice low but steady. "You're not the only one worried about where this is headed." "Good to know I'm not the only sane one here," Vina said, surveying the small, impromptu gathering of dissidents around her. "But what makes you think you can change anything? Talther's got the upper hand." "For now," Seraph replied, her gaze hard. "But we know where the cracks are. We could use someone with your perspective." Vina considered this. She wasn't one to jump into bed with anyone, metaphorically or literally, without considering the consequences. "What's your plan?" "Simple," Seraph said, her eyes glinting with the kind of determination that bordered on mania. "We expose Talther's lies. Show the others that the Oracle is more than just a tool for his vision. It's a tool for all humanity." We can use it to lift the FTL ban, spread its knowledge to everyone who needs it. And if he pushes back, Vina asked, not entirely convinced but willing to entertain the thought. Then we push harder, Seraph replied, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. Vina nodded, filing away the information even as she weighed the risk. All right, I'll see what I can do, but I'm not making any promises. The last thing we need is a civil war breaking out with Earth on the brink. Understood, Seraph said, a gleam of triumph in her eyes. We're counting on you, Commander. Back on the ship, Vina found Jax in the command center, fiddling with a screen that seemed to be doing its best impression of a kaleidoscope. How'd it go with the rebels? He asked, not looking up. As well as could be expected, Vina said, slumping into her chair. They've got plans to expose Talthar. They think they can get the Oracle's secrets out to everyone. And what do you think? Jax asked, finally looking at her. I think they are ambitious, maybe a little crazy, but they might be onto something, if we can keep Earth from going dark in the meantime. Well, nothing like saving humanity before breakfast, Jax quipped, turning back to his screen with renewed vigor. Speaking of which, Vina said, any updates from our friends back home? Jax shook his head, his expression darkening. Nothing good, more unrest, more factions. Everyone's pointing fingers, but no one's got a solution. Vina sighed, rubbing her temples. Figures, we're playing with fire here and no one's willing to come to the party with a fire extinguisher. Hey, look on the bright side, Jax said with a lopsided grin. If it all goes to hell, at least we'll have front row seats. Yeah, Vina said, unable to suppress a snort of laughter. That's exactly the kind of optimism I needed today. The following days were a blur of covert operations and whispered conversations, each meeting a calculated risk. The tension on the Earthship was palpable, each crew member acutely aware of the precarious line they walked. Vina and Jax found themselves poring over the Oracle's archives more than ever, searching for any hint, any clue that might give them the edge they needed. The data was maddeningly complex, a Rubik's Cube of information that resisted easy interpretation. Got something, Jax said one evening, eyes fixed on the screen. This bit here, some kind of encryption, but not like anything I've seen before. Vina leaned over, squinting at the display. Looks like a language, but not one that's ever been cataloged. Maybe the Oracle's way of keeping us on our toes, Jax remarked, typing furiously. Or just screwing with us. Hard to tell. Either way, we need to crack it, Vina said, determination hardening her voice. If it holds any key to FTL or anything else, it's worth the effort. Good thing I've got nothing better to do, Jax said, flashing her a grin. Days turned into nights, the artificial cycle of the ship marking time like a metronome. A sense of urgency hung in the air, heavier than the recycled oxygen they breathed. Finally, a breakthrough. Jax practically flew from his chair, waving Vina over. Think I cracked it. Or at least gave it a good enough shove to make it crack. Vina hurried over, eyes scanning the newly deciphered text. It's a blueprint for something big, a station. Or a weapon, Jax added, because of course they couldn't have nice things. Let's hope it's the former, Vina said grimly. Whatever it is, it's tied to Mercury. This thing was meant to be here. So the cult isn't entirely off its rocker, Jax mused. Just mostly, Vina replied, already planning their next move. We need to get this to Seraph and her lot. If they can help us figure it out, we might have a chance. Assuming Talthar doesn't catch on, Jax said. Then we'll have to be quicker than him, Vina decided, her resolve hardening into steel. Time to see if this rebellion has any legs. With their new intel tucked securely away, Vina and Jax made their way back to the cult's domain. The corridors felt different, a shiver of anticipation in the air, as if the machinery itself was holding its breath. Seraph met them in a secluded alcove, her expression a mix of anxiety and excitement. You found something. More than something, Vina replied, handing over the data. A blueprint, something big, tied to this rock. Seraph's eyes widened, her hands trembling slightly as she accepted the information. This could be it, the key to everything, or a very expensive fireworks display, Jax added. Ignoring him, Seraph nodded, determination etched into her features. We'll start analyzing it right away. This could change everything. Vina nodded, feeling the weight of their collective hope settle on her shoulders. Let's just hope it changes things for the better. As they turned to leave, Vina couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something monumental or catastrophic. But for the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of hope beneath the cynicism that had become her shield. "Ready for the next step?" Jax asked as they walked back to their ship, his voice tinged with that irrepressible humor of his. "Ready or not, here it comes," Vina replied. "And if we're really lucky, maybe we'll survive long enough to see how it all ends." And with that, they stepped into the future, their path lit by the uncertain glow of possibility and the stubborn resilience that only those who dared to dream in the face of darkness could muster. Vina Arcadi had always believed that betrayal was for the gullible, the naive, the kind of people who thought trust fall exercises were more than a corporate joke. Turns out she was wrong. As she stood there, hands bound and a bag over her head, she was acutely aware of the irony. She, the cynical commander with a PhD in skepticism, had been sold out by one of her own. The bag was yanked off her head with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer, and she blinked against the sudden brightness. The room was stark, a utilitarian space filled with the hum of machinery and the stench of desperation. Talther stood in front of her, wearing his usual oily smirk. If smugness were a cologne, he'd be drowning in the damn stuff. "Commander Arcadi," Talther greeted her, spreading his arms as if welcoming a long-lost friend. "So good of you to join us. Pleasure's all mine," Vina replied dryly. "I see the hospitality around here hasn't improved," Talther chuckled, a sound that grated like nails on a chalkboard. "You have a remarkable sense of humor for someone in your predicament." "Yeah, well, it's either that or start crying and I'm fresh out of tissues," Vina shot back. "So what's the game plan here, Talther? Gonna regale me with your villainous monologue before you start twirling your mustache?" Ignoring her sarcasm, Talther gestured to his loyalists, who flanked him like a pair of obedient guard dogs. "You've been quite the thorn in my side, Commander. But now that you're here, we can proceed without any further disruptions." Vina felt a flicker of rage. She'd been outmaneuvered, and now Earth was hanging in the balance. "If you think I'm just going to sit back and let you play God with the Oracle, you're even dumber than you look," Talther smirked, clearly unfazed. "You underestimate the power of faith, Commander. This isn't about playing God, it's about destiny." "Destiny, my ass," Vina muttered, earning a sharp jab from one of the guards. "Oh, watch it, you brute." "I bruise easily." As the loyalists led Vina down a series of dimly lit corridors, she couldn't help but wonder which of her crew had turned Judas. She mentally ticked them off one by one. Jax was too lazy. The rest were too busy trying to make their lives not suck in the middle of a galactic shitstorm to bother with betrayal. Her musings were cut short as they reached a cell that looked about as inviting as a coffin. The door clanged shut behind her, the sound echoing with finality. "Well, this is cozy," Vina said aloud, glancing around the cramped space. "I guess I should be thankful it's not a broom closet." She sank down onto the hard, uncomfortable bunk, the reality of her situation weighing heavily. Her mind raced, plotting her escape even as the odds stacked higher against her. Because if there was one thing she'd learned in her years of command, it was that no situation was truly hopeless, just very, very bleak. Back on the Earthship, "Why the hell are we here?" A name that felt more apt by the Ior, Jax was in over his head. The command center buzzed with tension, like a hive of bees perpetually seconds away from stinging the hell out of anyone who dared poke it. Jax paced the room, muttering to himself. "Okay, Jax, think Vina's counting on you, probably, maybe. Damn it, I wish I was better at pep talks." The crew, jittery and on edge, looked to him for direction, which was about as reassuring as asking a toddler to land a spacecraft. But he couldn't just stand here with his thumb up his ass. Vina was counting on him, probably. "All right, listen up, people," Jax called, mustering his best impression of confidence. "We need to figure out who sold us out and why Vina's missing. Think it's Talther. One of the crew asked, stating the obvious as if it were a groundbreaking revelation. "Gee, you think?" Jax replied, his sarcasm sharper than attack. "Of course it's Talther." The man's got more screws loose than a broken robot. They worked through the night, poring over data, dissecting every report, every communication log. Hours passed in a haze of caffeine and desperation, the ship's recycled air heavy with the smell of burnt coffee and regret. Finally, as dawn broke, not that you'd know it in the windowless confines of the ship, Jax had a breakthrough. "Gotcha," he murmured, staring at the screen with a mix of triumph and disbelief. "What is it?" one of the crew asked, peering over Jax's shoulder. "Looks like someone's been sending encrypted messages," Jax explained. "And not the good kind." With a few swift keystrokes, he decrypted the messages, revealing a string of communications between one of their own and an unknown source. The traitor had been hiding in plain sight, as they often did. "Son of a," Jax muttered, his hands shaking with anger. "They sold us out." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of the revelation heavy in the air. "What do we do now?" one of them asked. "We get Vina back," Jax replied, determination settling over him like a second skin. "And then we make Talther wish he'd never messed with us." Meanwhile, in her metal box of a cell, Vina was busy plotting. She examined every inch of her prison, looking for weaknesses, opportunities, anything she could exploit. The guards were predictable, following a routine that was comforting in its monotony. They might as well have given her a roadmap and a guidebook. She knew she couldn't do it alone, though. She needed allies, even if they were the kind who'd sell their own grandmother for a shot of adrenaline. Fortunately, Vina had a knack for finding people's pressure points. When her next meal arrived, a tasteless slurry that looked like it had been regurgitated by a particularly sickly alien, her guard lingered a moment too long, curious. "You ever get tired of this gig?" Vina asked casually, poking at the food with a grimace. The guard snorted. "What's it to you? Just making conversation," Vina replied smoothly. "Seems like a thankless job guarding prisoners. Especially when the guy calling the shots is a certifiable nut job." The guard hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing his face. Vina pressed on, sensing an opening. "Look, what do you really get out of all this? Talther's endgame doesn't exactly have room for his foot soldiers. When he's done using you, you're expendable. What are you getting at?" the guard asked, suspicion and curiosity warring in his eyes. "I'm saying," Vina said, leaning forward, her voice low and persuasive, "that you might want to reevaluate your options before Talther decides you're surplus to requirements." "I can help you, but you've got to help me first." The guard didn't respond immediately, but Vina saw the seed of doubt take root. She'd given him something to think about, and sometimes that was all it took to tip the scales. As the days dragged on, Vina chipped away at the guard's resolve, each interaction a calculated move in a game of cosmic chess. And bit by bit, her persistence paid off. One night when the guard brought her meal, he paused, eyes darting down the corridor. "What do you need me to do?" he whispered, a hint of desperation in his voice. Vina smiled, a plan already forming in her mind. "I need a distraction. Something big enough to cause chaos, but small enough not to blow us all to kingdom come." The guard nodded, understanding the stakes. "When do we do this?" "Tomorrow," Vina replied, her voice steady. "When the shift changes." And so the stage was set. Vina spent the night going over her plan again and again, ensuring there were no loose ends, no room for error. The hours ticked by with agonizing slowness until finally the day of reckoning arrived. True to his word, the guard created the perfect diversion. An explosion rocked the compound, alarms blaring as panicked cultists scrambled to contain the chaos. In the midst of the confusion, the guard unlocked Vina's cell, her freedom a tantalizing promise. "Good luck," the guard said, his expression a mix of fear and hope. "Thanks," Vina replied, clapping him on the shoulder. "Now get the hell out of here." With the compound in disarray, Vina moved quickly, slipping through the corridors with a grace born of desperation. She kept a low profile, using every ounce of her training to remain undetected. As she neared the exit, a familiar figure blocked her path. Talthar, of course, because nothing could be easy. "Commander," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I should have known you'd try something like this." "Yeah, well, you always were a bit slow on the uptake," Vina retorted, her mind racing for a solution. He smirked, raising a weapon, and Vina tensed, ready to fight to the last breath. But before she could make a move, a commotion erupted nearby, a testament to the chaos her would-be ally had engineered. Talthar's attention wavered just for a moment, but it was enough. Vina seized the opportunity, launching herself at him with all the fury of a cornered animal. The scuffle was brief but brutal, leaving Talthar gasping on the floor. "Enjoy your destiny, asshole," Vina muttered, sprinting for the exit with renewed determination. Outside, the barren landscape of Mercury stretched before her, an inhospitable wasteland. But freedom was freedom, and Vina was damned if she'd let a little thing like an unbreathable atmosphere stop her. As she made her way back toward the Earthship, heart pounding with adrenaline and resolve, Vina knew the fight was far from over. There were still mysteries to unravel, battles to be won. But for the first time since this nightmare began, she felt the thrill of possibility. And if there was one thing Vina Arcadi thrived on, it was the promise of a battle well fought. Back aboard the Earthship, Jax was pacing again, muttering curses under his breath as he waited for any sign of Vina. The minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness until finally, the comms crackled to life. "Jax," Vina's voice came through, breathless but triumphant. "I'm coming home." A cheer went up among the crew, relief and joy mingling in the recycled air. Jax grinned, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "About time, Commander. We were starting to get worried." "Yeah, well, can't have you slacking off in my absence," Vina quipped, her voice warm despite the static. As the Earthship swung into orbit to retrieve her, Vina couldn't help but smile. She'd been through hell and back, but she'd made it. And there was no way in the universe that she was going to let Talthar or anyone else keep her down. As the docking bay doors closed behind her, sealing her safe on board once more, Vina turned to Jax with a grin. "Ready to finish this?" "Born ready," Jax replied, his eyes alight with mischief and determination. With the odds stacked against them and time running out, Vina knew they had their work cut out for them. But with her crew at her side and a newfound resolve burning in her chest, she was ready to take on whatever the universe threw their way. Vina Arcadi had a knack for finding herself in situations that required the use of both her sharp tongue and sharper instincts, and this time was no different. Freshly escaped from the cultists' clutches, she found herself back on the Earthship Why the Hell Are We Here?, a name that never failed to remind her of the existential crisis that was space exploration. The ship had seen better days. The command center still reeked of burnt coffee, a scent so pervasive it could probably be bottled and sold as Desperation No. 5. Jax was there to greet her, looking like he hadn't slept since the last lunar eclipse, hair askew, uniform crumpled, eyes bleary but alert. "Commander," he said, with the enthusiasm of someone who just found a forgotten tin of coffee. "You're back?" "Yeah, I missed this place." "Nothing says welcome home like the stench of overcooked galactic sludge," Vina replied, a sardonic smile tugging at her lips. "We need to talk." "Where's the crew?" Jax pointed toward the cockpit, where a small group of equally sleep-deprived individuals awaited orders, their faces a patchwork of relief and curiosity. Vina nodded and led the way, her stride purposeful despite the fatigue weighing her down. "All right, listen up," Vina commanded, her voice cutting through the murmur of nervous chatter. "Things are about to get complicated, more so than usual. We've got an activated oracle, and that's about as comforting as having a live grenade as a paperweight." Jax raised an eyebrow. "So, what's our next move? Aside from praying to whatever gods haven't hitched a ride on an escape pod, first, we need to decrypt the oracle's purpose," Vina explained, the words tasting like ash. "And second, we need to figure out why these cultists want to roast their marshmallows on Mercury." The crew stared at her blankly, the gravity of the situation slowly sinking in. It was a testament to her leadership skills, not that anyone was keeping score, that they didn't immediately throw in the towel and make a run for the nearest bunker. Vina settled into the commander's chair, the leather creaking under her weight. Jax, you're on data analysis. Find out what the Oracle said when it got chatty. The rest of you keep your eyes peeled for any suspicious activity. I want to know the second Talther sneezes. Jax nodded, his fingers already flying over the console. I'm on it, Commander. Let's see what secrets this overgrown toaster is hiding. Meanwhile, back at the cult's lair, things were spiraling faster than a drain in a black hole. Talther, recovering from his rather undignified scuffle with Vina, was rallying his followers with all the charisma of a used car salesman with a nervous twitch. Brothers, sisters, and those who remain undecided, he began, his voice echoing through the chamber like a bad hangover. The Oracle has spoken, and its wisdom shall lead us to a new era. The cultists cheered, their enthusiasm disturbingly reminiscent of a crowd at a rock concert where the band had decided not to show up. Talther's smile was all teeth, an expression that would have been at home on a shark circling a shipwreck. Back on the Earthship, Jax was making progress, or at least, what passed for progress in this universe of infinite setbacks. I've got something, he announced, leaning back with a satisfied grin. The Oracle's messages were garbled, but I managed to unscramble a few lines. Vina leaned forward, her interest piqued. What did it say? Please tell me it didn't predict the end of the world. I'm not in the mood for another apocalypse. Jax smirked, but his eyes were serious. Not quite. It's more like instructions. Coordinates, to be exact, and a whole lot of mumbo-jumbo about unlocking the secrets of the universe. Well, that's refreshingly vague, Vina replied, her tone drier than a desert on Pluto. Coordinates to where? Earth, Jax said, his voice barely above a whisper. The word hung in the air like a death knell. Vina's mind raced as she processed the revelation. The Oracle was directing them back to Earth, a planet on the brink of going dark thanks to the FTL ban. This doesn't make any sense, she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. What if it's a trap? One of the crew members piped up, their voice tinged with dread. Everything's a trap, Vina retorted, her patience thinner than an interstellar telegram. But we can't sit on our asses waiting for the universe to implode. Suddenly, an alert blared through the ship, cutting off further discussion. Vina's hand flew to her console, silencing the alarm with a practiced flick. Her eyes scanned the incoming data, her expression shifting from exasperation to concern. Looks like Talther's gone and poked the hornet's nest, she said, her voice grim. The Oracle's activity is causing instability in the sun's corona. If we don't stop it, we're looking at a superflare that'll fry everything from here to Mars. The crew exchanged anxious glances, the reality of their predicament hitting home with the force of a meteor strike. Vina knew they had no choice but to act, and act fast. All right, new plan, she declared, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. We're going to disable the Oracle, but we'll need to get past Talther's merry band of zealots first. Jax nodded, determination hardening his features. Let's give these cultists a showdown they won't forget. The Earthship shuddered as it changed course, the engines roaring to life as they prepared for what could very well be their final mission. The air was thick with anticipation, each crew member steeling themselves for the battle ahead. As the ship approached the cult's lair on Mercury, Vina's mind raced with possibilities, none of them particularly pleasant. She knew they were walking into a hornet's nest, but she had no intention of backing down. Not now, not ever. Listen up, Vina called, her voice carrying over the hum of the engines. We need to disable the Oracle before it turns the sun into a cosmic barbecue. Jax, you're with me. The rest of you keep the ship ready for a quick getaway. We might need to bug out fast. Jax gave a mock salute, his grin lopsided but sincere. Got it, Commander. Let's crash this party. The Earthship touched down with a jarring thud, the landing less than graceful but functional enough. Vina and Jax disembarked, their boots crunching on the rocky surface of Mercury as they made their way toward the cult's compound. The lair loomed ahead, a twisted structure of metal and stone that looked like it had been designed by someone with a deep-seated hatred for aesthetics. Vina approached with caution, her senses on high alert for any sign of trouble. The entrance was unguarded, which should have been comforting but wasn't. It was like finding a snake with its mouth open and no fangs, a trap of the most obvious kind. "Stay sharp," Vina muttered, her voice barely audible over the crackling of the radio in her ear. "Talther's around here somewhere, and I'd bet my last ration pack he's not alone." They slipped inside, the dimly lit corridors echoing with the distant sounds of machinery and chanting. It was like stepping into the set of a low-budget horror film, only with fewer special effects and more existential dread. Jax followed closely, his eyes scanning their surroundings for any sign of movement. "You know," he whispered, "I never thought I'd miss the smell of burnt coffee." Vina smirked, her grip tightening on her weapon. "Keep your eyes on the prize, Jax. We've got a son to save." As they navigated the labyrinthine corridors, the Oracle's presence loomed large in Vina's mind. The machine that could potentially save or doom them all, depending on who got their hands on it first. Finally, they reached the heart of the compound, a cavernous chamber dominated by the Oracle itself. The machine was a towering monstrosity of wires and circuits, its surface pulsating with an eerie glow. Talther stood before it, flanked by a group of his most fervent followers. His expression was one of rapture, as if he were witnessing the birth of a new universe. "Commander Arcadi," he intoned, his voice filled with self-righteous fervor. "You're just in time to witness the dawn of a new age." "Funny," Vina shot back, her weapon trained on him. "I was just planning to crash your little light show." Talther chuckled, a sound devoid of humor. "You don't understand, do you? The Oracle will elevate us beyond the petty limitations of flesh and bone." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Vina retorted, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "The only thing getting elevated is your ego." She glanced at Jax, who had slipped unnoticed to the side, inching toward the Oracle's control panel. "Shut it down," she mouthed, hoping Talther's attention was firmly fixed on her. Jax nodded, his fingers dancing over the holographic interface with a speed born of desperation. Talther, realizing what was happening, lunged for them, his followers moving in sync. But they were too late. The Oracle's glow dimmed, its hum quieting to a low murmur as Jax initiated the shutdown sequence. "No," Talther bellowed, his voice a mix of rage and disbelief. "You can't do this." "Watch me," Vina replied, a grim smile tugging at her lips. With a swift, decisive motion, she delivered a knockout punch to the nearest cultist, paving the way for their escape. Chaos erupted as the cultists scrambled to restore the Oracle, but Vina and Jax were already moving, their path back to the Earthship clear. "We need to get out of here now," Vina shouted, urgency propelling them forward as alarms blared in their wake. The compound shook with the force of the Oracle's shutdown, its systems destabilizing under the sudden loss of power. As the ship took off, the ground below erupting in chaos, Vina couldn't help but feel a grim satisfaction. They had stopped Talther for now at least, but the mystery of the Oracle and Earth's future remained. Back in the safety of space, she turned to Jax, her expression a mix of relief and determination. "We did it," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos they'd just faced. Jax grinned, the tension of the past hours finally easing. "Damn right we did. Now, what's next?" Vina leaned back, her thoughts already racing ahead. "Now we figure out what the hell the Oracle's coordinates mean, and why the FTL ban is really in place." As the Earthship cruised through the void, its crew weary but resolute, Vina knew the path ahead was fraught with danger and uncertainty. But she also knew they were ready for whatever came next. After all, they were human. And if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was surviving against the odds. Vina Arcadi was many things, a cynic, a commander, and occasionally the reluctant savior of the human race. What she wasn't, however, was an optimist. So when the Earthship, "Why the hell are we here?" slipped into the shadow of Mercury, she wasn't holding her breath for a warm welcome. "All right, listen up," Vina barked, her voice crackling over the ship's intercom like an old radio station nobody wanted to listen to. "We're going in to take control of the Oracle. Remember, we need to use it to negotiate Earth's way back into the FTL network. No heroics, no screw-ups, and definitely no touching any shiny buttons unless I say so." "Got it, Commander," Jax replied dryly, his tone suggesting he'd rather be anywhere else, like running a marathon blindfolded through a field of broken glass. "Do we get hazard pay for dealing with existential crises, or is that asking too much?" "Your hazard pay is not dying," Vina retorted. "And that's non-negotiable." Jax, sporting bags under his eyes that could rival an interstellar freight hauler, grinned. "Guess I can live with that." Literally. The Earthship glided toward the cult's compound, its exterior a patchwork of solar panels and questionable welding jobs. Vina had always thought the place looked like someone had given a bunch of monkeys a welding torch and said, "Have fun." "Commander," Jax's voice came through her earpiece, "I'm reading increased cult activity down there. Looks like Talther's not throwing in the towel just yet." "Of course not," Vina muttered. That bastard could lose a limb and still keep preaching about destiny. As they approached the lair, Vina's mind was already plotting their next move. The Oracle was their only bargaining chip to get Earth back into the FTL club, and she wasn't about to let it slip through her fingers. "Touchdown in 3, 2, 1, Jax announced, and the ship landed with all the grace of a drunken elephant. Vina and her team disembarked, weapons at the ready, minds sharp with the knowledge that they were walking into what could easily be described as a cosmic-level clusterfuck. The entrance to the compound was still unguarded, but Vina wasn't buying it. She knew better than to trust anything that appeared easy. "Stay sharp," she reminded, not bothering to hide her disdain for the obvious trap. Inside, the dimly lit corridors were alive with the sound of chanting and malfunctioning machinery. It was like a haunted house attraction, only less entertaining and with a higher likelihood of death. "Commander," Jax said, his voice barely above a whisper as they moved through the shadows, "I heard Talther's been spouting some new prophecy about Mercury being the new Eden." "Please," Vina scoffed. "The only thing Mercury's good for is a fast tan and a quick death." They moved with purpose, their path leading them back to the Oracle's chamber. The machine stood dormant, a relic of a bygone era that still held the power to change the universe, assuming they could figure out how to work the damn thing. Talther was there, of course, looking like he'd just had a spiritual epiphany and a lobotomy at the same time. "So you return, Commander," he intoned, as if they were old friends meeting for tea and not mortal enemies meeting for a showdown. "Yeah, well, your hospitality sucks," Vina replied, weapon pointed at him like a finger of doom. "Now stand aside. We've got a planet to save." Talther's oily smirk returned, a look that would have been right at home on a used spaceship salesman. "You seek to wield the Oracle, yet you understand nothing of its true power." Vina sighed, the kind of weary sigh one gives when arguing with a particularly stubborn toaster. "I don't need a cultist lecture, Talther. I need results." Jax had already moved to the Oracle, his fingers deftly working the controls. "Commander, I've accessed the interface. Looks like we can use this thing to broadcast a signal powerful enough to reach the FTL network." "Good," Vina said, her eyes never leaving Talther. "Then let's get to it." The cultists shifted uneasily, their faith visibly shaken as the Oracle's systems came to life. Talther, on the other hand, remained steadfast, his eyes locked on Vina with the intensity of a man who believed he was on the right side of history, even if that history was about to be rewritten. "Your efforts are futile," he declared, as if his words could somehow alter reality. "The Oracle only answers to the worthy. And by worthy, you mean you and your merry band of nutjobs," Jax quipped, not bothering to hide his disdain. Talther's eyes narrowed, but Vina cut him off with a wave of her hand. "Save it. Jax, send the signal." Jax nodded, his fingers dancing across the console like a pianist playing his final concerto. The Oracle hummed with energy, its systems interfacing with the ship to amplify the broadcast. Vina took a deep breath, the weight of the galaxy pressing down on her shoulders. "This is Commander Vina Arcadi of the Earthship Why the Hell Are We Here?" she began, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "We have seized control of the Oracle and are prepared to negotiate Earth's reinstatement into the FTL network. Failure to comply will result in the permanent loss of humanity's last hope." The silence that followed was deafening, a tense pause that stretched across the void between stars. Talthar watched, his expression one of grudging respect mixed with impotent rage. "You play a dangerous game, Commander," he said, his voice a low rumble. "Life's a dangerous game," Vina replied. "And I'm damn good at it." Moments stretched into eternity until a response crackled through the Oracle's speakers, the voice of Admiral Hawthorne cutting through the tension like a knife through butter. "Commander Arcadi," he said, his tone that of a man who'd just bitten into a lemon. "You certainly have a flair for the dramatic." "I aim to please," Vina shot back, the corner of her mouth twitching in a half-smile. "Now about that FTL ban." The negotiation was intense, each word a calculated move in a game of interstellar chess. Hawthorne was stubborn, but Vina had the ultimate trump card, the Oracle's capabilities and Earth's precarious position on the brink of darkness. In the end, it was human ingenuity and Vina's sheer determination that won the day. Hawthorne begrudgingly agreed to lift the FTL ban, provided they could prove the Oracle's worth to the network. "You've done the impossible, Commander," Hawthorne admitted, his voice laced with a mix of admiration and irritation. "But don't expect me to start sending you birthday cards." "Wouldn't dream of it," Vina replied. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a cult to dismantle." With the FTL ban lifted and Earth's future secured, Vina turned her attention back to Talthar. The cult leader's confidence had evaporated, his followers dispersing like leaves in the wind. "This isn't over, Arcadi," Talthar warned, a hollow threat from a man who'd lost everything. Vina approached him, her expression one of pity rather than anger. "Go home, Talthar. Find something real to believe in." The Earthship departed Mercury, leaving the cultists to pick up the pieces of their shattered delusions. As they cruised back into the safety of space, Vina allowed herself a moment of reflection. "Commander," Jack said, joining her in the command center, "you really think Earth's ready for this?" Vina shrugged, a weary smile playing on her lips. "Probably not." "But since when has that ever stopped us?" Jax chuckled, his laughter a rare sound in the bleakness of space. "Fair point. You know, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm actually looking forward to a cup of burnt coffee." Vina grinned, the weight of their victory easing her tired bones. "Let's get back to Earth," she said, her voice a mix of hope and determination. "We've got a whole universe to explore and coffee to drink." As the Earthship sailed through the void, leaving the chaos of Mercury behind, Vina couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They had faced the impossible and emerged victorious, proving once again that humanity's greatest strength was its ability to persevere. "Set a course for home," she ordered, her heart lighter than it had been in years. "We've got a lot of work to do." And so they journeyed onward, the crew of the Earthship Why the Hell Are We Here?, ready to face whatever challenges the universe threw their way. After all, as Vina well knew, the future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape, and she wouldn't have it any other way. As the Earthship Why the Hell Are We Here made its way back to the familiar blue vistas of Earth, the crew couldn't help but feel like they'd just run a marathon through hell and somehow lived to tell the tale. Not that anyone was rushing to be the narrator. Vina sat in the command center, the lingering smell of burnt coffee making itself at home in her nostrils. It was oddly comforting, like the universe's way of saying, hey, it could be worse. After all, she and her crew had just averted, if not outright prevented, the permanent extinction of humanity's last hope of getting back into the FTL network. Jax sauntered over, still looking like the poster child for sleep deprivation. "So, Commander, think we'll get a parade or just a strongly worded memo?" "Probably the latter," Vina replied, tapping the console with a sense of finality. The universe doesn't hand out gold stars, just more ways to screw up. The ship's automated systems chirped, a notification indicating that Admiral Hawthorne's transmission was incoming. Vina rolled her eyes, knowing full well that Hawthorne's idea of praise was akin to being hit over the head with a rolled-up newspaper. Commander Arcadi, Hawthorne's voice was as welcoming as a tax audit. Congratulations on not completely buggering this one up. Wow, sir, you really know how to make a girl feel special, Vina deadpanned, not bothering to hide her sarcasm. Is this your way of saying you owe me a drink? Hawthorne's sigh crackled through the speakers. Let's not get carried away. Earth's back in the FTL network, but remember, the universe won't play nice forever. Got it, Vina replied. Stay paranoid, don't expect any world's best commander mugs. Exactly, Hawthorne said, his voice losing a fraction of its usual irritation. You did well, Vina. Earth owes you, Vina smirked, a rare moment of satisfaction settling over her. I'll add it to the list of IOU the universe has racked up. As the transmission ended, Jax leaned back in his chair, stretching tired limbs. So, what happens to the cultists? Reform, hopefully, Vina said, running a hand through her hair, or they'll just start worshipping the next shiny thing they find. Either way, it's not our problem anymore. On Earth, things moved faster than a fire in a fireworks factory. The remnants of the cult of the Singularity, now leaderless and more than a little confused, found themselves integrated into society. Turns out, even zealots could be useful when it came to ancient tech. Their knowledge, previously reserved for the faithful, now helped advance human technology, making FTL travel more efficient and accessible. Back on the Why the Hell Are We Here, Vina found herself begrudgingly standing in the spotlight. Earth's leaders, having realized they still needed someone to blame if things went sideways, hailed her as a hero. You know, Jax said, observing a broadcast where Vina's face, complete with her trademark scowl, was plastered for all to see, I think they actually like you. Don't remind me, Vina groaned. I prefer it when they think I'm just one bad day away from shooting the whole lot of them. That's the spirit, Jax chuckled. Keep them wondering whether you're their savior or executioner, Vina sighed, watching the ticker tape parade on the screen. People were cheering her name, but all she could think about was how she'd rather be anywhere else, preferably with a stiff drink and a nap. A victory lap for simply not dying on the job. If only I'd known that's all it took to be a hero. The integration of the cultists wasn't without its bumps. Sure, they had knowledge, but they also had a penchant for spontaneous chanting and incense burning. It took a few stern words from Vina, and maybe a minor threat of airlock exposure, to curb some of their more eccentric rituals. Talthar, once the self-proclaimed prophet, was now just another face in the crowd. He had traded his cult robes for a lab coat, working alongside scientists who could barely believe they used to be on the same planet, let alone the same scientific frontier. You know, Talthar, Vina said during one of his visits to the ship, I half expected you to go full supervillain on us. He shrugged, an expression of resigned acceptance on his face. Even I can recognize when destiny's given me the middle finger. Vina chuckled, appreciating the irony. Welcome to the club. We meet every Monday, bring your own cynicism. With Earth's place in the stars reaffirmed and a tentative peace with the cultists established, the world was on the cusp of a new era. Humanity, ever the scrappy underdog, was ready to explore the galaxy with gusto, and maybe a bit more caution this time. Think they'll screw it up? Jax asked one evening as they stared out into the vastness of space, the Earthship cruising on autopilot. Absolutely, Vina said without missing a beat. But hey, that's what keeps life interesting. Together, they watched as the stars zipped by, each dot a potential disaster or discovery. Humanity was nothing if not resilient, a species that thrived on chaos and caffeine. As the Earthship continued its journey, Vina felt a strange sense of hope. Not the naive kind, full of rainbows and unicorns, but the kind that recognized things were messy, complicated, and utterly wonderful. "Commander," Jack said, breaking the comfortable silence, "you ever wonder why we do it?" "Every damn day," Vina admitted. But then I remember how boring life would be without a few existential crises. As the Earthship sailed through the cosmos, leaving behind bureaucratic headaches and the cult's peculiar brand of crazy, Vina couldn't help but smile. For the first time in a long time, Earth had a shot at something bigger, something brighter. "Set a course for nowhere in particular," she ordered, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Let's see what kind of trouble we can get into." Jax grinned, already punching in coordinates that made no sense to anyone but him. "Sounds like a plan, Commander." And so, with a ship full of cynical optimists and a universe full of possibilities, they ventured into the unknown. After all, out there in the vast, cold expanse of space, who knew what awaited? Perhaps more cults, perhaps more chaos, but definitely more coffee. Vina finally let herself relax, her mind briefly wandering to thoughts of home, a place forever changed by their actions. The potential for future harmony was there, a fragile thread woven into the fabric of their existence. And while the universe may never make things easy with people like Vina and her crew, Earth had a fighting chance. As the ship sailed on, leaving a trail of stardust and sarcasm in its wake, Vina found solace in the journey ahead. For now, at least, they were the masters of their fate, explorers of the endless and perhaps most importantly, purveyors of cosmic-level snark. "Here's to the future," Jax mused, raising an imaginary glass. "To the unknown," Vina echoed, her voice carrying the weight of countless adventures yet to unfold. And with that, they journeyed on, ready to face the universe head-on, one sarcastic remark at a time.